I just got done interviewing congressional candidate Tyler Dykes, who's running for Congress in North Carolina. And let me tell you this, he's the only true America First candidate in his race. And here's my full interview with him. Thank you for coming on the show today. And for people who may not know you yet, can you go ahead and introduce yourself and why you decided to run for Congress? Running.
Yeah, sure thing. So my name is Tyler Dykes, and I am running for U.S. Congress to replace the retiring Nancy Mace. And I am sick and tired of foreign influence stopping anything good from actually happening in this country. You can see in this flag behind me, I don't know if it's backwards on your screen, but it is on mine. We must stop foreign influence from taking over our country. We were promised deportations, they have not been delivered. We promised no new wars, and we're at war with Iran. And we were promised all these different things. And it seems that every single time that someone like Thomas Massie, a great congressman, actually goes to do what was promised, they are attacked and sabotaged primarily by a lot of these people that have dual loyalty and no loyalty to America. And so I began to see that. And then I began to think that I should run for office because I know that I'll stand up for what's actually right. I just didn't know what office. And so I began to go up to a lot of different campaign events around here after I got out of prison for serving my time and being pardoned for January 6th. And I was invited to speak at a number of places, and people love to hear me speak. And then I went and I started going to a lot of these campaign events, people running for governor, for the state house, state senate, and for US Congress. And when I went and I heard the candidates speak for US Congress, I was disgusted by all of them. They openly have interests, business interests that directly benefit them through their use of political power. They brag about being part of the establishment, about not wanting to actually change anything. And so when I saw the low quality of the candidates that were running in this, I knew that I had to run because now I am the only America First candidate in this race who actually wants to make a difference. And when I saw that there wasn't even one that was good that was running for this seat, that's when I knew I had to step up and fill that role.
That's awesome. And what would be the first issue that you target day one on day one? What would you focus on?
Day one, that's going to have to be with fighting against the Speaker of the House, actually. So I don't know if you know the way that it actually works is you got Speaker of the House and U.S. House. He assigns out the committee positions. The committee positions are where you actually debate in the committee to put a bill on the House floor. And so if you're not in a committee, you can't actually push for a bill. Well, part of the issue is that the Speaker of the House generally only gives you a committee seat if you raise between $150,000 and $250,000 for the party, for the national RNC. And then once you've raised and fundraised all this money and called people and gotten to donate, then you can get the committee seat. And so essentially, in order to have any real power in Washington, you have to go and get the donor class support. You have to get and sell out to their interests. And because you are fundraising for a PAC and for the party, the one singular donor can fulfill all the money you need in order to get onto a specific seat. Now, with that also, the more money that you raise better than everyone else, the better a seat that you get. So fundamentally, what's happening is you have a lot of these rich lobbyists that are buying seats in these committees and then stopping any legislation that hurts them and their business interests. And so day one actually would have to be fighting back against that and issuing, and hopefully enough other America First candidates win and get in office. And it will be, of course, to ensure that the House Speaker actually goes to someone who's deserving and not to Mike Johnson. He is terrible. Not to the last like 8 House Speakers have been horrible. And hopefully, all we really need is about 5 to 10 genuine, good America First people to be in Congress. And then we can ensure that someone who is solid actually wins. 910 to caucus Thomas Massie and the Freedom Caucus, and in order to help make that happen. So that'll have to be day one. You can't do anything else in Congress without ensuring you're on a committee seat. I am not going to do that kind of insane fundraising that they want. I am not going to sell it to corporate interests. And so day one will have to be fighting to remove or have a good speaker in the House. That will be the only way to have any real power. And so that'll have to be day one. Day two, we'll be focusing on mass immigration. Once I actually have a bit of power, I will join up with other people in the Freedom Caucus, people like Well, Chip Roy passed some legislation or tried to pass some legislation. He's not running for reelection, where he proposed a total moratorium on all immigration, an end to immigration until we get everything figured out. So, number two on my agenda would be immediately trying to work on that to get a similar bill passed. Marjorie Taylor Greene, before she left office, had a similar bill. A lot of other people in office have had bills like this. I would work with them to get one of these bills that would end legal work visas and help have deportations. That would be my main priority once I actually have the ability to do something in Congress.
That's awesome. And something you mentioned about corporate PACs. What's your opinion on an APAC? And do you think they should be banned
They should
or
be banned.
regulated?
They shouldn't even be regulated. They should just be gone.
Mhm.
Get rid of them. We don't need APAC. They're one of the few PACs that are a foreign interest group that are not forced to be registered under FARA. And take a guess of the last president to try to make that happen. But they have been constantly funneling money into all of these various candidates, all these various groups. And in fact, I'm sure you're well aware of this, but you go to the APAC website. I have a screenshot of it. I think they might have taken it down. It used to be apac.com/2024 election, where they bragged about how they had paid and won 350 of the 500 or so seats in the US House, where their candidates won. So APAC candidates won 3/5 of the House, a majority to be able to pass any legislation they want. And so without cutting off that funding arm, without stopping them from lobbying and spending millions of dollars, it will be very difficult for genuine America First people to get in office. Now, obviously, it's still happening, but it is a lot more work to overcome money. And so, yes, I'm not only opposed to them, I think it should be banned, registered under FARA, and not allowed to give more than $1,000 in a race. And even that's too much.
I completely agree. I think it needs to be banned because how can you be America first if you take money to be pro another country?
Yes, exactly.
And you signed the term limits pledge I saw. How long do you think term limits should be?
I'm not entirely sure. It's been proposed like 2 terms of 6 years should be the max, 2 terms of 4, 3 terms of 3. I don't really know what the best one would. I do think we need term limits of some kind, 2 terms of something. I think it's very difficult to get anything done in 2 years, especially when you're constantly seeking reelection. So personally, I think we should lengthen the term that someone seats in the House to a 2 or a 4 year term, and then just you run for reelection once, and that's it. So it's like the presidency. I think that would be a lot better. I also don't think that will solve all of our problems. I think that a lot of our problems are based around not only the fact that people are selling out, and so we need term limits to get rid of them, but also the fact that even with term limits, we would be forcing out a lot of people that are good. And more than that, we would not be stopping the incentives to begin with. And so there's all this incentivization going on to try to get money into politics, to buy out these House seats. And if you put on term limits without limiting that, then all you're doing is incentivizing the people that get elected to sell out even harder. Because now you don't have a lifetime to collect the millions of dollars in backrooms deals. Now you only have 8 years or 6 years or 4 years. So you have to get it all right away. And so I think that term limits without eliminating corporate lobbying will actually make things a lot worse. And so I think we need to have both. I think we need to overturn Citizens United. We need to make it so that we can't have all of these PACs coming in and spending unlimited money on candidates. And then on top of that, we need to also have term limits. I think we need to have both, not one or the other. And that will truly help to solve a lot of the problems with that we're seeing today with corruption.
I completely agree. And that led me on to the next question. Do you think we should ban insider trading or just stock trading in general? Because insider trading in Congress and the government in general.
Yes, absolutely. We should ban stock trading except for mutual funds or whatever it is. When you have a big group of collection of stocks and you just put some money in it and you put a percentage of your paycheck away into it and then it grows with the economy. That should be allowed, right? That's a very typical savings and investment strategy. But the kind of stuff where I think it was Byron Jones or whatever, the guy who's running against Fishback in Florida, Byron Donalds, not
Yeah.
Byron Donalds, is so irrelevant. I don't even remember his name properly. He was sitting on this legislation for, I think it was something relating to like environmentalism, and then he put hundreds of thousands of dollars into some environmental company, and then it went up, and he made a ton of money. Nancy Pelosi did the exact same thing. That should be banned. So just putting your money away into an investment account that's a blind trust or whatever, that should be allowed. But being able to invest in specific companies with the insider knowledge, that should not be allowed.
I completely agree. And what is one thing that you think politicians are too afraid to say?
Well, they're afraid to speak out about the foreign lobby. That's for
Mhm.
sure. They're afraid to criticize the main party, whatever party it is. That, like most of the other Republican candidates against me right now, they're not. Not all of them are anti-America first. A lot of them agree with a lot of my positions. Actually, I've talked to a lot of them, but they're terrified of standing up against Trump, of going against the party, of going against the donors. And so they know what the truth is, and they're deliberately not saying it for fear of a lot of the power and influence that these people have. So I'm the only candidate in this race who is willing to speak up. I was in prison for January 6th. I was pardoned. I went to the protests to try to stop the statues of Robert E. Lee and other American heroes from being torn down. So I really sacrificed a lot. And so I'm the only one in this race that has demonstrated any ability to stand up and speak the truth. And a lot of people are afraid. And especially, I think they're afraid also of the Israel lobby and the power that they have in politics and the money that they fund into rhinos campaigns and into left wing people's campaigns. And so I think speaking out against them, especially, but also going up against the establishment and the status quo, that is very difficult for most of our politicians.
What was it like on January 6th and what followed?
It was honestly, it was a great time. I have to be honest. I enjoyed it the heck out of it. It was fun until, of course, everything went bad with the violence. You know, it was like this big party. You had like 1 million people walking all around. You're meeting with all these other people that supported Trump, and he's giving this speech, and then it's a great speech, and everyone's cheering, and then just a field of hundreds of thousands of people going, USA, USA, goosebumps. Can't even describe how electric of a feeling that is to be feeling the current running through the crowd, the people cheering, everyone happy to be there, and also angry at the rigged election, at a lot of the stolen stuff that had been happening. And so when President Trump said on his podium to go to the Capitol building and make your voices peacefully and patriotically heard, I went. And call me a dupe, but I went. And I walked over to the Capitol building alone and walked around the side off to the smaller East Rotunda entrance. And even there, it was still a party. Even as people were approached, all the barricades were pretty much torn down by the time I got there. And I approached the East Rotunda, and it was a party. You had a few thousand people at the bottom of the steps all dancing and cheering. You had like this Humvee looking police vehicle and three people that were standing on it that were, you know, twerking, dancing, holding a boombox. It was a party. There was nothing violent about it whatsoever until the police, without provocation, without an announcement of any kind, they shot tear gas canisters and percussive grenades behind the crowd. So they shot it and landed behind the crowd, forcing the crowd forward into the arms of the police. And then the police came forward and started hitting protesters, going after women especially, attacking them. And then when the men were pushed forward and then got riled up seeing that and started to move forward, the police backed up the steps. And so they'd hit back up, hit back up. The crowd loses interest, shoot percussive grenades behind them. Boom, 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 these big explosions forcing people forward all the way up to the front door. And of course, as you know, or maybe you don't, the doors in the East Rotunda, they're all magnetized. They could have locked it down to where it was impossible to get in, where you'd have to crawl in through broken windows. No one's going to do that. They could have stood there by the broken window and arrested every person as they came in. No one would have done it. They easily could have controlled the situation, but they didn't. The doors opened from the inside and they let the people rush in. And that's exactly what happened. And I was in the crowd. I was towards the front of the crowd, but not the very front. And so we moved in, and then it was like a tour. I just walked around the Capitol building, walked around and went between the little red lines where they had the ropes that you had to walk in between, and we had a single file line of riotous insurrectionists walking in a single file line in between these two red uh, lines. And it's like just walked in, walked around, took a look around, and then left. And that was essentially my experience on January 6th. There was a time also when, before entering the building, there's this guy at the riot shield, a police officer. He went to smash it down onto the head of this very small woman, maybe 5'5" or so, in front. And so we went and he brought down the riot shield, smashed this woman, and then the whole crowd reached around, grabbed hold of the shield, and then ripped it out of his hands. And then, of course, once the crowd ripped it from his hands, they all let go. They didn't want to touch it. And I picked up the riot shield. And so, for that act of essentially touching the riot shield and picking it up and holding it, they charged me with robbery with a deadly weapon, where the robbery was taking the shield. And the deadly weapon used in the robbery was also the shield. And that's a 30-year charge if you didn't know. And so,
Wow.
yeah. And so they went above and beyond in overcharging and deliberately escalating the situation. Then they opened the magnetically sealed doors to allow anyone who they wanted to just come on in. And then they arrested people after the fact and overcharged them. And so that was the experience of January 6th. In my opinion, now, of course, it was a setup. I question who was involved with the setup. I even wonder how far up that it goes, because a lot of the federal agencies were under the control of the Republican Party at the time. So was it all Nancy Pelosi that did that? Was there something else afoot? I don't know. And quite frankly, I don't really want to know the answers to that question. It's a bit of a scary answer to realize that every level of government has been controlled and infiltrated against you. But the reality is that that is most likely the case. It was set up deliberately to try to prevent anyone from speaking out. And then once Biden got in office, they rounded up everyone and arrested them specifically to shut down conservatives, nationalists, right wingers, anyone who's willing to buck the status quo, even libertarians, anybody that stood up and spoke any level of truth had to be silenced into submission. And so that's what the mission of January 6th was. And it was temporarily successful. But I think that a lot of people have realized the truth since then. And a lot of people are willing to speak up now. And so I think that's a really good thing.
I remember I was 12 years old whenever January 6th happened. I
Wow.
wanted to be there so bad. I remember
Sure.
watching stuff about it with my dad on TV. And I think it's important to hear people like yourselves' stories. And if you had one last thing for voters who are undecided yet, what would you say?
One thing that I like to tell people that are a bit more on the liberal side of the spectrum, the people that try to push for, universal health care and benefits for teachers and unions and workers' rights, that kind of thing. You have to understand that the people in power, the elites, they're not going to give you anything. They're not going to do anything in order to make your life better. And so it's far better to have someone like me in power, even if you hate me, even if you disagree with me, even if you think my ideas are radical and insane, you need someone like me to go toe to toe with the elites, to fight them, to help remove their power. That way, we can have genuine people in office who actually want to better America. And then we can have a discussion about what healthcare is. Then we can have an actual discussion about maybe we make a concession here, a concession there, and do something to improve the country. But that will never happen as long as these lobbyists, foreign interest groups, and special interest groups have a strangle grip over our country. So that stranglehold needs to be removed first. Then we can have a good faith discussion about the future of our country. And so I think that is something that is important to think about. And it's important for people on all political spectrums to think about. Without removing the elites, there will be no change. We have to remove them first, then we can have real change. And that's my position.
That's awesome. And lastly, if you had one piece of advice for people like myself, Gen Z, what would it be?
Don't do what I did. Don't go to all these protests. Seek money, wealth, and power by any legal means necessary. Get yourself in a position where you can speak up, where you have the ability to speak up. And I think especially with that, it'll be starting a business. I had my own business where I was running it, and I had 5 employees. I was doing between $25,000 and $30,000 a month of revenue, and it was doing really well. And my arrest for January 6th shut it down. The banks shut down my bank account. They grabbed a hold of my money. I couldn't pay my employees. I had to lay them off. I shut down. And so, in retrospect, obviously, it would have been a lot better if I didn't go to January 6th. A lot better if I saved my money, if I got my business up to where it could run without me, if I had a fallback plan just in case something happened with the banks, and then I should have run for office with the extra of my own money behind me. That's something that I should have done. It would have been a lot more effective. Protesting is important. You have to speak up, but I think it's important to do so from a position of power, from a position where you're actually able to influence things. But most importantly, we're able to insulate yourself. Even if it's something as simple as a $20,000 trailer on a half acre of land that you own and you have a milking cow, and yet, but it's fully paid off. Even that would be better than the position that I found myself in, where I owned my own home and then now I was having to essentially borrow money in order to pay my mortgage. That was not a fun experience, let me tell you. And so that would be my advice for younger people is yes, you need to speak out. Yes, you need to be vocal, use social media, go to the protests, but more importantly, build up a business, get yourself self-sufficient, working with other people. That way you can make a difference in the long run. And that's my
That's
message.
awesome. And thank you for coming on the show today. And I apologize for all the technical difficulties. And I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, Brody. Thank you for having me on.
You bet. I would like to thank Tyler so much for coming on the interview today, and I wish him the best of luck. I will leave all his socials below and follow for more interviews.